Thank you very much for joining us for the first of a two-part series of conversations with the senior senator from Massachusetts, Senator Elizabeth Warren. Always good to see you. Thank you for coming in.
Too.
So we're going to talk about the status of federal funding for some of our most important infrastructure projects. But first, I see you and your pal, the president, have been exchanging pleasantries again. This time, or most recently, over his decision to fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics in a dispute over her reporting of disappointing job numbers. We can dig into your complaints about the firing, but what did those numbers tell you about what's going down with our economy?
Well, is that the economy is a lot shakier condition than the earlier numbers had reported. And look, you never just look at one set of numbers. You look at a lot of things and try to get a sense of what's going on. And the problem we've got right now is Donald Trump inherited a very strong economy in January. Predictions were we were going to head off in strong GDP, strong employment. Instead, Donald Trump decided, first of all, just to cause tariff chaos, right? So tariffs are up, tariffs are down. And what that does is every employer in America who's in manufacturing, anything that might be import or export, says, I don't know what it's going to look like. So they all hold back. They don't build new buildings, they don't hire, they don't buy new tools, and that starts to have an effect on the economy, as well as pushing prices up in areas where tariffs are beginning to bite. Other thing he does, he comes in with Elon Musk, and they fire or try to fire hundreds of thousands of federal workers all around the country and cut off grants all around the country, things that are both important, obviously, to our research, to our growth, but also to local economies, right? And then they pass their signature piece, which is this bill to take away health care from 17 million Americans, drive up the cost of health care for others, so you can do tax breaks for a handful of billionaires. And I say all this because those three things together, any one of them would have created choppy water for the economy. The three of them together means it's serious wave action out there.
Well, you mentioned the tariffs, and I was going to bring this up later, but let's talk about it now. Last week, Chrissy Lynch, the head of the Massachusetts AFL-CIO, was sitting where you are, and she said that while she doesn't like the way the Trump administration has deployed the tariffs, she agrees with the broader goal of onshoring jobs and manufacturing. And you have said similar things in the past.
Yeah.
So is that still your position?
Sure. Look, but let's be clear about the difference between that position and what Donald Trump is doing. I believe that tariffs are an important tool in the toolbox for helping develop manufacturing here at home. You may use it very strategically to say, okay, we picked an industry here. We want to protect that industry while it's growing, while it's, developing its roots, while it's getting underway. And we may coordinate it with other things that are going on. Like we may want to help create more supply chain for them. We want to make sure that this is all possible. So you can do a lot to create better growth conditions. What Donald Trump is doing is as far away as you can get from that. He does the would-be king off with your head approach to tariffs. He doesn't like what they're doing in Brazil to a former leader. So tariffs go through the roof. How does that help build manufacturing here in America? He decides that Canada is our enemy because they don't agree to be the 51st state, so they have to face high tariffs. Across the board tariffs, where we don't produce a lot of those goods. All that does is drive up costs for families and create more chaos in the economy.
Well, we have to take a break, but just to put a period on this conversation, how dire is the outlook? Should people be worried about recession, about their investments?
Well, economists across the country are saying that there are a lot of warning signs, yellow signs, in some cases red lights flashing, that the economy is headed into a very, very difficult moment if Donald Trump doesn't calm down on the tariffs and stop this business of trying to cut off research, fire workers.
Well, who's going to calm them down?
Yeah, no kidding. You know, I'll tell you the one who calms him down. I watched it happen back in March. You know who calms him down? It's when the markets tank.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Donald Trump, he can't listen to live human beings. He can't listen to people who say, my costs have gone up, I can't afford housing, I can't afford health care. But he does seem to listen when the bond market says the United States is not a safe place to invest.
And judging from his tweet storm the other day, he listens to you when you go on CNBC, right?
Evidently.
All right, let's take that break and we'll continue our conversation with Senator Elizabeth Warren in just a moment. So please stay with us. Welcome back to our conversation with Senator Elizabeth Warren. And Senator, just about a year ago, you were part of an event down the Cape celebrating the awarding of $1 billion in federal funds toward replacement of the Cape Cod bridges. That brings the total federal aid to that project to $1.72 billion. Is that subject to clawback the way the feds have been clawing back other funding?
Well, legally, absolutely not. And we're underway and we're going full speed ahead. And that's exactly as it should be. On the other hand, the Trump administration in other areas has shown that it is perfectly willing to ignore the law and try to pull back research grants, try to pull back investments throughout the country. This is more of the chaos that Donald Trump creates.
Well, they clawed back almost $330 million in promised funding for the Mass Pike project in Alston. What's the status of that dough?
Oh, that one's bad in terms of the federal, because what happened there is that Trump got all of the Republicans, House and Senate, to vote as part of that big, ugly bill to actually claw that money back. You know, you'd have standing in court on other money. But this one, he got them to claw it back, and I just hope everyone pays attention to this, John. We lost that federal money here in Massachusetts so that Donald Trump could help fund a bunch of tax handouts for a handful of billionaires and billionaire corporations. One quick example, Meta, under this bill, gets right off the top, not for future things, but for just how it's been, $15 billion from that big, ugly bill that they passed, while Massachusetts loses the money to help straighten out its turnpike and just important infrastructure money that had already been voted on by Congress.
So that Pike project is DOA for now?
Well, it's been taken out of the law, thanks to every single Republican voted for it.
Back to the Cape Bridges, you say it's full steam ahead. Total cost is estimated to be about $4.5 billion. Those of us who lived through the big dig know that these estimates are, shall we say, subject to change. So that's a big gap, even if we keep the $1.72 billion in federal dough, and it could get bigger. Are we on the hook for the rest?
Well, remember, we've already been through the math on this. We already got a big chunk of federal money back during the Biden administration. So the 1.7 is the part that's coming next. But this has been coming in chunks all along. And much of that money has already been banked. But yes, the state will pay for a portion of the bridge. That's how it's always been. And that's how it is in most of these big infrastructure projects.
What happens when you or your office reaches out to executive branch officials about issues like this, or do you reach out?
Oh, on this one, we're just all business as usual. The checks are coming in, we're spending the money, we're making our plans, we're continuing to roll forward.
Yeah, but is there anyone you can call to say, hey, this Pike project is really important, cut us a break?
Let me shift it slightly. In other places where there have already been cuts, we call, for example, at NIH, we call at the Department of Transportation, but we make those calls just trying to make the case for why this is important, why it's important to Massachusetts, but also why it's important to the whole country. Now, that's the thing about infrastructure, whether we're talking about roads and bridges or whether we're talking about medical research, these are the investments that help make us a stronger country. Congress has already allocated this money, and under law, the administration is supposed to spend it, and that's where much of the push is.
I guess what I was trying to get at is when you reach out to this administration, are you heard? Are you treated with respect? Or is it, oh, it's Liz Warren calling, click?
You know, the places I've reached out the most have been to the Social Security Administration and to the Department of Education. And in both cases, I've been pretty critical publicly about the consequences of the cutbacks, the Social Security Administration, the wait times that have gone up for people who are online, the threat that they had made to close offices. I called in the director and actually got him to show up and sit in my office and got him to make commitments for changes they would not make, for cuts they would not make. Same thing with the Department of Education. I got the Secretary of the Department of Education to come in and, for example, to admit publicly that she had no legal authority to shut down the Department of Education, which is what she and Donald Trump, up until that moment, had been threatening to do. So I've had the heads of these agencies in. I've had a list of things I wanted. I didn't get everything I wanted on my list, but I sure as heck got in there and fought for it and actually got some real commitments out of them, and I will stay after them.
Okay, so there is some
back and forth
point to the dialogue.
You bet. You bet there's a point. And you know, I'm glad you raised this, John, because there's a point to calling people out when they don't do either what the law says they should do or what people around this country want them to do. Okay, there's no specific law that says that the head of the Social Security Administration can't close down some of the regional offices, but by damn, I can make it clear to him what that will mean to tens of thousands of seniors around this country and people with disabilities around this country who have a problem serious enough that they can't get it solved online, they can't get it solved over the phone. If they can't get to a local office, it's like having cut their benefits off. And I make it clear to him not only the consequences, but that I'm going to be as loud as possible about those consequences. We have a Social Security war room and a lot of senators and a lot of staffers who are ready to go at a moment's notice.
And he was not totally impervious or indifferent to that.
That's exactly right. Indeed,
okay.
He made some commitments that were exactly in line with what I wanted, that he was not planning to close any more offices, he was not going to fire any more people, and he agreed to an investigation by the Inspector General that will come in and audit the numbers that he claims are how fast he's processing and so on.
Wow. All right. Senator, thank you for this. We're going to have you sit there for an entire week. And when we come back next weekend, we're going to talk about politics, the Democratic Party, and more. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us right now. Back over to my colleagues for more WBZ News.